Vault Hunters, and welcome to Echoes from the Borderlands, the podcast where we explore the iconic Borderlands franchise through conversations with the writers, devs, artists, and others who are responsible for its creation and success. I'm sure many of you have experienced the phenomenon where upon the conclusion of a game's primary narrative, the game just sort of ends. It's upsetting, it's unnerving, and honestly, it's offensive. But what if the end wasn't the end? What if more game content could simply be downloaded? What if we took a side quest from our main mission and talked about the DLC of Borderlands, specifically Borderlands 3 Bounty of Blood? I'm your host, Joel Watson, and today I'm joined by creative director Matt Cox, senior project producer Anthony Nicholson, and lead technical sound designer Jesse Lemons. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Tell me if this sounds right. Borderlands 3 Bounty of Blood is the third of 4 DLCs for Borderlands 3. It was officially announced on May 21st, 2020, and was released on June 25th, 2020, and its story centers around saving the Old West-style town of Vestige from a gang known as the Devil Riders, who want to use mutated beasts and experimental technology to take over what remains of the planet Gehenna. Yes?
Sounds right.
That's exactly right.
Is that correct? Did I read that off Wikipedia correctly?
Yeah, they've done a great job being accurate.
Excellent. Let's table all of that for now and talk about Borderlands DLC as a whole. Our approach to DLC is, at least with Borderlands, is specific. First, why do we do DLC? Are we trying to expand the story, keep players engaged, show off new gameplay features, or all of the above? None of that?
Yeah, I think we always want to keep the players engaged with the things that we have finished at the end of a game. So we always want to give the fans the content. We want to listen to their feedback and be able to go and be more creative with some of the things that could be more expansive. You know, in DLC, it allows us to think outside the box and be more crazy and come up with different kooky ideas that mainline, more... The project itself, you can't really, you don't really want to do that with, but in DLC...
You're basically saying fewer people are looking. We can screw around.
Kind of, yeah. It's a great chance to take some risks and expand the universe and see what happens.
Do you find that there is a nugget of the idea? Like, is it a story idea, or is it, you know what, we did not implement this feature in the main game and I've been dying to try it, and then you start building something around that?
I think there's different versions of that, but I don't think anybody is sitting there and says, you know what, we can't do that now. We're going to wait until DLC.
Right.
It's more like...
That's probably a common misconception.
It is.
I think so.
It is.
Well, in some ways, the DLCs are also kind of like a what if to an extent, where it's like, we had a DLC in Borderlands 1 that was like, what if everybody was zombies now? And you got a one where you go inside Claptrap's head for the pre-sequel. We get to do some crazy stuff in the DLC.
Well, yeah, that's why we do it. Let's talk about how we do it. What you're saying is really interesting, because I've noticed that with Borderlands DLC, we kind of genre hop between storytelling genres, between game genres, within the looter-shooter framework. But is it that chance to like, hey, we're probably not going to make a zombie game, but we could do a zombie DLC, or we're probably not going to make a pirate game, but we could do a pirate DLC?
I think so. I think there's a lot of themes that may not fit into a giant main game that might be just more fitting in a smaller focused DLC that you can, again, take some risks to see what could be something for the future, or just something that can be celebrated as a standalone DLC idea.
Is there something about the organizational structure of the Borderlands games in that everything happens on a planet, you can leave the planet, you can go to another planet, that allows you freedom to say, hey, maybe this planet, for instance, is an Old West planet, or maybe this is an underwater level?
I think in Borderlands 3 in particular, that was true, because that was really the first game where we were leaving the planet and going to different planets to explore stuff. So that we took that in our DLCs and did the same type of thing. Even in a different way for the last DLC, the Krieg Fustercluck DLC.
say that carefully.
You gotta say it very well.
But even then, like so we have going off to the Handsome Jackpot. We had Gehenna, and we had in the DLC with Hammerlock, that's a completely different planet. And with each of those, we themed them differently around what the creators really wanted to think about and kind of explore. Like one was, more Western, of course, and then we have like the Hammerlock one that was kind of more spooky and more gritty and horror filled, and get to try some of those types of things.
You have a lot less rules when you can just go to a completely different planet and you're not just another region of Pandora or something like that, for sure.
It probably helps you not break canon while also expanding canon in a way. When does DLC dev start on a Borderlands game? I can't imagine it's on day one of game dev for the mainline game.
No, certainly not. No, we typically go and we start really thinking about that about a year before the release is supposed to happen. Just the ideation and talking with our publisher about like, hey, what do we think this looks like? What do we want to be able to incorporate? What are the things that we've learned from the past games that we want to be able to try and include on this one? And
we also understand a lot better how we're building the particular game we're building. Right. So once we understand what Borderlands 3 is, it gives us a lot more jumping off points for different ideas. So waiting for the actual main game to mature is probably a better breeding ground of ideas. And I think I remember for us, like, we didn't restrict who pitched DLC ideas. Like, it was not a privileged thing. Anybody could pitch a DLC idea, if I recall.
Yeah, we actually ended up, we had, whenever we were doing the first understanding, like, hey, we need to make sure that we understand and can get a plan for this DLC so that we can talk with our publishers about it. There was a couple of folks like myself that got in a room and we talked about what things could be, the things that we've talked about in the past. And then it was like, hey, let's open it up to the studio. And so, sent some messaging out and had a lot of pitches. I think I had like 20 pitches come in where everyone was like, hey, we could do this or we could do that. And a lot of them were really, really good. And a lot of them were really, really different.
Borderlands Kart Racer.
Yeah.
Borderlands Smash Brothers clone.
Hey, you'd be surprised the kind of wild shit that's out there. Yeah.
It sounds like you're joking.
Yeah, it sounds like you're joking. I think you're just reading from the actual list of pitches that are actually on our documentation.
In terms of the number of DLCs we do, I know a lot of AAA games either do 0 to 1. Borderlands games typically do 4-ish. Is that because of the sort of replayability or that sort of long engagement factor with the fans, or is there just something else about a Borderlands game that allows us to branch out in that many different directions with each mainline title?
I think in the last couple of Borderlands games, there was a recipe that worked, and so people really were engaged with that. When you have the season pass type of content for Borderlands 2, and then you bring in like an assault on Dragon Keep,
right.
that felt really good for people. And so we took that, learned from what was really good there, what we wanted to improve, and then kind of added that, and then did a lot more for Borderlands 3 with like the live updates and the takedowns and raids.
So just like with every other part of the process, you've learned from experience that the fans are keyed into that. They're interested, they're engaged, they're ready to go, and then we're able to not just give them exactly what they're asking for, but like continue to develop with enthusiasm and original content that keeps these franchises, like we said, alive for a long time. Mm-hmm. I mean, 4 years after the last game release, there's actually, I don't have numbers in front of me, but there's a decent amount of people playing Borderlands 2 right now, like at this very minute. So in terms of Bounty of Blood, let's get back into this specific one. Is Bounty of Blood, what if Borderlands was a Western, or what if a Western was Borderlands?
That's tough to say. Actually, I remember, like, when everybody was pitching, it was always on my list as like, I need to get a pitch in. It's like, what if we did a musical DLC? And like, I remembered, I think it was Randy Varnell, like, got wind that I thought of that, and he was really sad that I didn't actually pitch a full musical DLC. But like, I kind of missed the window. And so I actually, when I was offered the opportunity, it was like, hey, do you want to head up one of these DLCs? I was looking at a list of pitches. And so a Western DLC was already pitched, and it's kind of a weird spoiler to say this, but like, I'm not a big Western guy at all. It's like, the guy that was the creative director of the Western DLC is not a Western fan. But I think it was Danny Homan, our lead writer for Bounty, who pitched one of the original ideas for the Western. I was like, hey, but what if we could have a gang just like ride dinosaurs instead of horses? Like, then I'm in. And then what if we could like really dive deep onto an original villain? And so that's what got me originally invested in.
Did that
Danny's
take you
pitch.
from a non-Western enthusiast to a Western enthusiast, or did that just give you enthusiasm for this project because cowboys would ride dinosaurs?
I mean, come on, cowboys riding dinosaurs. That's pretty damn cool. You
can't go wrong.
So it gave me enthusiasm just because I think one of the benefits of a lot of classic Westerns is just a simple revenge plot. So I wanted to bring the themes of revenge and redemption. Like that's something Westerns actually do very, very well. And so it's like if we could tell a simple revenge plot and a simple story of revenge or of redemption, we could really build some new characters and introduce that to
it.
The
Also
world.
takes, I think it's an opportunity to do something small within the very large Borderlands universe.
Yes, I agree. And when we were looking at it, like we had the 3 other DLCs were the types of DLCs that were going to pay off previous characters that existed. And I remember being very inspired at the very beginning where, you know, Moxie is such a huge character in the Borderlands universe, but she was introduced in a DLC in Borderlands 1. It's like, okay, what if we could be that for Borderlands 3? This is the one that is a self-contained, let's introduce somebody new. And we had that in Rose and to a lot of extent, Juno.
Let's talk about the pitch process. You mentioned you had something like 20 pitches from the team. How close is what was pitched for Bounty of Blood to what was actually released?
Half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the theme, right?
Western.
The type of stakes. But I think whenever Matt and the team who were going to be taking the directorship of the actual DLC came on board, I wanted to make sure that these guys had that creative vision to be able to go and say like, okay, yeah, we understand that all of this stuff needs to be done because these things are rolling, but here's what we're thinking with this. And so he made a lot of really cool changes. He talks about music. There's definitely a music influence in that one.
Yeah, I can't get away from that. I like the idea of having music be such a character. And I mean, even my work that I did like with Vault Bosses and some experiments on Borderlands 3, I've always tried to elevate music as a character. And so that's where like the control mechanism of Rose came out when her whistle and learning how that controls the story whatever we called them actually in Bounty of Blood.
Ruiner.
And so like there was this sort of tension that you could discover of she really thought she could control the Ruiner through this music and this like constant like years and years of training. And so I thought that was just a fun thing to explore. And then of course we had the Wanderer, this basically bard that you save that sings about the bounty hunter's journey after every mission that you complete. And so, yeah. You
had mentioned wanting to create new characters. Were you originally starting out with existing characters, or?
So yeah, I think the original pitch was going to be another one that was looking back to previous Borderlands characters, but I thought we could tell a cleaner story. I just love the idea of introducing something brand new into the Borderlands universe. And like there was even a moment where it was going to be Eden Prime or Eden 5. But then going back to what you were saying earlier, it's like it's much cleaner if it's just a brand new planet and we don't
rules.
bring any rules of what people's expectations are. Of a planet that already exists in Borderlands knowledge. So we really, like, Rose wasn't the original villain either. It was, I think, Dr. Slagtooth or Mr. Slagtooth or something like that. But we really wanted to double down.
I did read something about the Slagtooth gang.
I think the Devil Riders used to be called the Slagtooth gang.
Right.
But then we wanted to, one of the things that I've always noticed about the Borderlands fandom is a lot of people either like the Borderlands 1-tone or the Borderlands 2-tone. There's a lot of discussion, and both are great and have their different qualities. But it's like, what if we made the main plot of this game darker? And something a little bit more serious. And there was a lot of discussion between the lead mission designer Skylar and I. And a lot of our designers, we love being wacky, and that's hallmark of Borderlands. So we kind of came to this agreement where the side missions could go wacky, but with the tale of Rose and revenge, we're gonna do something a little darker.
How did you balance that between that sort of wild vacillation between tone from a gameplay standpoint?
Yeah, we didn't.
Asked and answered.
It's like, all right. No, it was literally that binary where it's just like main plot, serious, side missions, wacky, and then hope that it worked.
Is this where we get Of Blood and Beans?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, there were some very fun side missions.
Yeah,
there.
and that's the thing is like, what do we think is cool, and what do we think that players are going to think is awesome?
Yeah.
And so whatever that is, like, let's find a way to make that work.
And ultimately, it's very important that our team loves what they're making, because when people love what they're making, I think that shows in the end product.
Jesse, we're talking about tone. How does sound and music factor into your goals for the tone for the project?
Well, like Matt was saying, like the tone of this DLC is quite a bit different. You know, it's a lot more darker. Has a lot more serious vibes to it. And between
until you get to the beans.
Until you get to the beans.
Unless you go off the main
Goofy
path.
Town. It's Clown Town.
And so what we did is this is the first DLC, and I think the first chunk of Borderlands where we actually did all of our music composition in-house.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 2 people in the sound team who were Julian Peterson and Raisin Varner, who did the music for this DLC. And that was to help us, because normally we just outsource a lot of our content for that stuff. Not that it's bad. I mean, the soundtrack is great for our games, and I love most of them. And so
you love all of them. Sure.
But,
officially, we all love all of them.
Yeah, I don't care for Joe, but sorry. The music is generally like pretty well loved, and we put it on Spotify and people listen to it.
Yeah.
And so, but this one we wanted to be able to work really closely with the mission teams and with the story team to know like how we can do a better job of scoring sort of the moment to moment. And there's even an introduction of like a narrator for this game.
Right.
And so it's one of the things we were trying to get early on was stuff like synchronizing. The narrator's going to introduce this moment, and they're going to introduce or tell you what's going on in the story. And we wanted to be able to score music and the sound effects. And so I think there's a moment in the beginning when the narrator talks about, the heat and the wind like blowing in. And we, synchronize, now the wind picks up.
The sound supports
you
it.
feel it.
Right.
And you hear, distant dinos.
There is a
crying.
filmic quality to, especially the intro of this DLC, where a lot of video games can feel like I'm playing a movie, but this kind of feels like I'm both simultaneously watching and playing a movie. Like I'm involved, but I'm also being informed as to what's happened, about to happen, and happening currently by this narrator voice. So it's just a different vibe.
Yeah, and it was a really fun game mechanic as well, because a lot of the times if you don't have like a narrator, you have to build all of these vignettes with story NPCs, like the moment to moment, and spend a lot of time like making sure the player understands what's going on. So even as a game mechanic, the narrator was really helpful because it could fill a lot of gaps that we didn't have to build in the world. But like you said, it's this interplay between what the player is doing, what the narrator is letting us know.
A lot of Borderlands design, feel, tone is about a shorthand with the player. We talked about this a lot on our guns episode, that one of the reasons for the distinctive look and the distinctive effects and distinctive sounds of the different manufacturers is so you get a lot of information quickly without having to stop playing. I feel like this does the same thing. The narrator mechanic, the music, everything says, here's what's happening, here's what you should be paying attention to, but you don't have to take your eyes off what you're doing. You can just progress. It's all happening around you,
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly a lot of what we were trying to sell with some of the music, and what we try to do in the sound design in general is, if you don't notice us, we've been doing our job right. And so, there's several parts where a lot of our game score and stuff in the main game and some of the other DLCs, you kind of make a track for the ambience and the track for the combat. And this game we scored, making sure your progression through the story had implications with the music, and we were selling you the tone. And I'm reminded of there's like the canyon that leads into the facility, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we wanted this to feel like you were encroaching on something sinister, something unknowable. And so
Yeah.
You're smiling.
No, so I'm smiling. No, you're taking me back to the facility because like there was like a Metroid Prime element with some of the things that we were trying to do gameplay wise, and then when we went into the facility, the music in particular in the facility, because it's like, what the fuck is the company doing with this? So like you're uncovering the secret of the company that you don't quite, attach yet. Well, some people figured it out, but there was the music quality just, it was eerie as shit. And it was so good. And it just really like, I don't know. Sorry, I'm smiling because the music was fucking great.
It was amazing.
No, and this was something that this was a thing that Julian really wanted to push with was to make sure that like you feel one way as you're in the surface, and as you get deeper into the facility, you get to this, and it brings in more of like a Philip Glass sort of sounding industrial feel to it. But then there's like an elevator ride, and the elevator ride is this tension building, like we're revealing so much about the background of this facility just with this elevator ride, and he builds this tension with these strings and leaves you sitting there
like a
with
sinister Jurassic Park moment. Oh my gosh,
and then that leads into
such a good
the
job.
deeper facility, and even with what happens in that facility, and then the aftermath of all of that. There's even another layer of like the trauma that you've got.
Do you think that was only possible doing the music in-house?
Yeah. It is. It's very. We found, especially with the scope of Borderlands 3, that the outsourcing of the score and how much detail we wanted to get from the composers, it was hard to translate that to them. And so we would have a review process with them, and they're great composers. A lot of them want to do something more linear, and so we're trying to get something more interactive, and that is really difficult to get.
You kind of have to be staring at the same thing at the same time and having the same idea at the same time.
And when level changes or shifts around or something, you've got to be able to pivot. And so having the score done in-house gives us that flexibility to be
that's crazy, because
if
if someone says, the canyon's twice the size now, you're like, damn it, now the music's got to be twice as long or something.
Yeah, and now you've got to change how that stuff triggers, change how it fades in and out from one thing to another. And, having a guy on our team like Julian, who's a programmer, does generative music, got his PhD in it, and does composition as well. We've got this, national treasure in our company who's able to, craft this stuff and make it work, and understands, the tonality of the composition that needs to happen, and can talk directly with Matt or talk directly with whoever's making the map.
Especially if music was an initial goal for your focus of creative direction, having that ability to communicate so closely and work so closely has to be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, before I got into game design, I wanted to get into games via music, as I've been writing music my entire life. So music has always been something I cared very, very much about elevating in video games, where in many games, or many people just think, oh, music is the background. But like, I think we have so many so much untapped potential in the entire industry to elevate music to another character that we treat in our game. And I think, I mean, maybe this is true or not, but like hopefully it was nice for the audio team to know that I also cared about music to such a degree.
Yeah, I mean, we love it. We always encourage the other teams to consider us.
Don't forget about us. We're still here.
There are some people who are in the camp of well, I'm sure the audio guys are going to do something with this. But the more collaborative we can get, we usually come up, I think it feeds back. We can give information about what we can do that feeds into what your design can do. And then it just creates this feedback loop of generating new ideas and ways to work.
Totally.
Tonal goals aside, what were the goals for gameplay from the outset?
I just wanted to introduce something new. It's we already have our core loot loop. Everybody knows we're going to add some pretty badass guns and gear.
Right.
But I'm such a Metroid Prime fan. I'm such a Nintendo fanboy. So it's let's add some new gameplay objects to see.
Some jump pads.
Some teleporters. Just we didn't go crazy with the types they were, but let's do some lock and key mechanism and see how that feels. Again, DLC, perfect place to try to see if that's something that can fit. So we gave that a whirl.
Yeah, with DLC, you always want to try to find and strike the balance of familiar with new.
Right.
You don't want, because there are a lot of people.
Oh, and you're
who-
going to piss people off if it's not just familiar enough.
That's
too,
right.
So
Exactly. And so I remember with that, like we did a game jam, and so everyone was throwing together all of those different types of things, like what the jump pad and the
Explodey plant, I can't remember what we called it.
Course
3 years
floater.
ago. That's an eternity.
yeah, we talked about how in a
the
previous
boat
episode where like the butt slams, that's not what they're called, is it?
Yeah.
That's what they're called. It's like there was a couple of Mario gameplay elements added when those were added. You know, there was almost a double jump and a butt slam that reminds me of Mario stuff. So
oh my gosh, yeah. No, there's some Nintendo influence there. But another one of the things is player progression's obviously very, very important in Lands games. But I wanted to create some elements that weren't just progression that you see on a menu and a checklist. And so that's kind of where we got this idea of the town changing because of what the player does.
Right.
So it's not just the Wanderer when he updates his song like that sings about the tales of the bounty hunter. But we even had a whole like challenges where you killed certain enemies, and then their trophy you would see their trophy back in the town. And let's not forget Mike Costner's movie, the actual like monster movie. You found like different clips of the lost found footage that you would find, and then you could go to the theater and watch an entire movie. But like it's just those small things of, oh, this is a collectible. I can watch it on I can see the tick box on the menu. It was like, no, let's put something in the world that makes it feel more lived in. And I don't know if people notice, but like if you collect them all, there's like these tarps over the actual marquee that doesn't say. But if you collect them all, the tarp comes off and the whole marquee shows like what the movie is. So it's just like those sorts of lived in touches we wanted Vestige to really feel real and connected to player action.
Well, and that's the type of things that in a mainline game or in the primary project, you can't really divert resources away from because of the scope, because of the implications of what you need to do to be able to ship this game. But in that situation, the smaller team, understanding exactly what your parameters are and what you need to do, you get to go and do cooler stuff like that.
Because you're basically talking about a main street. And so if you're saying, I want to design an interactive main street, cool. If you say, I want to design an interactive planet, they're like, we're not.
Yeah, and there's always the hub town, like the hub town type that like is like prime for that stuff. But again, like with a smaller scope, we could really, really dig into stuff like that. Even with, the rock that was stolen, like here's like a giant plot device in the center of town that is now not there. Like that sort of easy thing that something is there and then it's not. It's like that's felt, and then at the end you beat the ruiner and the head's in town. Like it's that sort of fun stuff that I felt we felt it was really important to do and like make the player feel connected to progression more than just what you see on a menu.
When you're talking about all of these things that you're not sure if you can do for a main game and then you can do it in a DLC, I think that also stems from the mature game that we've launched and knowing all of those things and the problems you've already solved for the main game, and to say like, okay, we know how to do this, and we built tools to do blank. Now, how can we take those and expand them? Can we do that, or what else can we do with these things that we've made?
Is there a hope that some of these new features will work their way back into mainline games of the future?
I mean, I think it kind of depends on what the game is and what it is specific, because the reason we're able to make that stuff feel so special is because we have crafted it specifically for that experience.
It's very bespoke.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
we tried to do a little bit of it in Wonderlands too. If you go back to Brighthoof, like, and some of the ancient obelisk enemies, like you see their corpse in the tavern. So there was a little bit of that, but again, like that was a whole game. And so like doing that sort of scope was a lot harder to do.
Let's talk a bit about the story. Matt, I guess you're off the hook because I would ask what your favorite Westerns are, but you don't even seem to like them. So what were the story inspirations? I mean, I feel like there's an obvious hearkening back to both Westerns and like samurai films.
Yeah, 13 Assassins, 310 to Yuma, I know were a lot of big inspirations. Our art director on the project, Kevin Duke, is very passionate about a lot of stuff. We were both very passionate about cutscenes and stuff, but yeah, I remember those two were pretty big influences.
Yeah, we were looking at those. We did when we were doing early ideation. We looked at a lot of those spaghetti western type films.
Sergio Leone and stuff
Sergio
like
Leone,
that.
yeah. So like the Dollars trilogy and stuff like that, and just trying to like really not take so much what they're doing and do that type of thing, but more like the tone, the theme, the vibe, and set it up like with the different narration and the different beats that these guys had kind of executed.
And just the
along
pace
way.
of cinematics as well.
Yep.
What I've been curious about this, but what inspired the Asian influence that you get in some of the enemies and the? Do you guys even remember what led to that discussion?
Yeah, I do. There's part of it. Whenever Scott Kessler and I were on the marketing tour for Borderlands 3, we actually got to go and do a lot of interviews with the Japanese press and the South Korean press. And a lot of what we heard was that those fans really love to be able to see those influences over there, and they like whenever it feels, we do it all the time. Like we'll throw some Texas stuff in the game because, we're all from here. But like putting it into that perspective, and you see it also with Gearbox Studio Quebec in some of the DLCs that they were heading up. There's more
and we saw it in the pre-sequel with the Australian influence.
Exactly.
Too, so, yeah.
And so like we heard that, and coming back and talking with these guys and talking with Kevin Duke about that stuff is like, hey, that already kind of fits with some of the things.
And there's a natural relationship between spaghetti westerns and like Kurosawa films.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is this lone stranger comes to town beset by outlaws, and sometimes they have a kid with them, and they've got to solve this town's problem, and then they probably move on. That sort of rings true through a lot of different genres, and so to see that married in this makes sense.
Yeah, so I think just the feedback of, hey, look, we have fans out there who really love this type of stuff. I mean, it's on Matt's shirt. Being able to do that and talking with the art team about it, and they kind of rallied around it and got excited to be able to build that type of stuff.
Hey, Vault Hunters, we've been trying to reach you concerning your vehicle's extended warranty. You should have received a notice in the mail about your car's extended warranty eligibility. Since we haven't gotten a response, we're giving you a final courtesy call and offering you a new bundle from Gearbox and 2K. It's called the Borderlands Collection Pandora's Box, and it contains every Borderlands game to date for one great price. It's available now on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. To speak with someone about extending your car's warranty, press 1. To be immediately connected with a Borderlands bundle specialist, press 2. We've talked a bit about the narrator and how important that is as a character and a mechanic. He, for gameplay, he takes the place of Angel or Lilith as the driving force, the thing that's pushing you forward. I find it interesting that he's not talking to the character, he's talking to the player. Like that feels, once you realize that, it feels different from other Borderlands games.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting balance to strike because it's like you're talking, like you said, literally to the player about a thing that theoretically, I guess, is already going to
has occurred, is occurring.
The narrator already knows what's going to happen, but you're actively discovering it at the same time. No, we totally recognize the weird contrast there, which was a little bit of a risk, but I don't know. The team really pulled it off. Writing, audio, everybody. I feel like it.
Well, it lands really well whenever you're playing through it and you actually feel it, and he says something or you do something, and it's like, oh.
And the voice is fantastic. It's Brandon Potter, I believe, is the voice of the narrator, and it really is. It's just it's a fully fleshed character that you never learn too much about. And
I know people were really sad because I know there were a lot of people like, we're gonna find out who it is, and that was actually a question it's like, do you find the narrator? Is it below where you fight the ruiner? He's like in that cavern, and it's like, no, we just let the narrator be the narrator.
The mystery surrounding the company is another core of the story elements of this DLC. For me, the amount of emphasis placed early on in the game of, but we don't say their name. I was like, oh, they're just not going to say. And I thought it was going to be like, maybe they didn't come up with one, or maybe they just didn't. Maybe all the other corporations were taken for other projects. How did that idea come together? The reveal that it was Jacobs all along.
I mean, well, the first thought obviously is Jacobs and Western. Here
Obvious,
we go.
yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing that we were up against as far as like building a mystery. It's like, who is this company? And then it's literally a Western. But all of this weird tech and experiments doesn't necessarily ring true with
Right.
Jacobs. So like building this idea that before they really found their vision and their style and their eventual just like lane of weaponry, that they had this black site where they tried all this heinous shit that they're trying
Yeah.
to keep low. That just sounded like a really fun reveal or mystery to build for literally any manufacturer. But the fact that it was Jacobs and it's the type of weird shit that doesn't necessarily ring true with Jacobs
there's a macabre experimentation vibe to everything they've done on that planet that immediately, to me at least, betrays what you've experienced of Jacob in the main game just recently. So it's like, oh, they're maybe one of the softer manufacturers. They're out for profits and they like what they do, but they're not trying to destroy or decimate or use up resources or hurt worlds, you know? And then you're like, oh man, they're all the same.
Yeah. Sorry.
It was a different CEO. It was a different time.
Yeah. It was a different time.
I do also
Best of
appreciate that
intentions.
it's a generational story, especially how you bring in with Rose saying her grandmother was involved in the initial project, that it is a generational trauma kind of for both the planet and the character. So it's an interesting element. In terms of the world building, Gehenna and Vestige it's a side of Borderlands we haven't seen before. Gehenna is similar in that it is a planet ravaged by a corporation's meddling, right? But in a totally different way. How is it different than what we've seen from the other, Hyperion and Atlas and Malawan and everybody that's Dahl has stripped planets for all that they're good for and left them to die?
I think nobody thinks there's anything left on Gehenna to actually mine or like worth. There's no like big vaults to find. Like there's
Right.
no promise of something growth. So the only thing you really have left is one person's resolve to think that she can actually control the one thing, but everybody's abandoned it. Where I think more the Pandora is like everybody's still out to get all the resources.
Right.
Where you just have this small village of folks that are just like, all right, I this is my home. Leave me alone. But I don't know. It's
That's
more
really
of a
interesting.
singular, like a more singular focused resource versus.
That's interesting because it's literally the singular ideal that, hey, a whole corporation tried this and failed with nearly infinite resources. I can probably do it.
Yeah, I mean, Rose was, raised by her grandma who was like teaching her how to whistle and like how to control, and she believed in the core of her being, pun intended, I guess, core, that she can control the biggest. The biggest monster that came out of all of these weird experiments, and to some degree, she was
Kind of right. Yeah. There's a problem with Borderlands villains being kind of right sometimes.
Yeah,
They usually take it too far, but they're usually kind of right for a little while.
yeah. It's interesting because like one of the things you're theoretically not supposed to do as a game designer is like have the player fail, and so like the whole like facility, the run up to the bombs, like, oh, we're obviously going to stop the bomb from being dropped because that would be too
Right.
devastating. Oh, what?
Yeah.
She was successful. Oh, well, now we've got to go stop Rose before she wakes up the ruiner. And of course, like, well, we fail at that too. And she gets away. And it's like, how are we going to, it's like, theoretically, how's that going to make the player feel good? Well, we still
At the
fight
same
the big
time,
monster at the end.
Yeah, I was
So,
gonna say at
okay.
the same time that you're making the player fail, it's not if the player was looking at their watch and being like, "Well, I've only been playing for 5 hours. Is this over? Probably not. I probably haven't just won. Oh, of course I haven't. Like the bomb just dropped." You also see it from a perspective that is eerie as hell because it's like watching the mushroom cloud in the distance and going, "Well, what do I do? Like, am I going to survive?"
I remember we had a lot of honest pause about that entire sequence, starting from the explosion all the way to the run up back to the village, all the way up to the crater, of what we should depict, because it was the first time that I think I realized that, oh shit, we are doing Borderlands but a little darker, because it wasn't just the amazing job all the effects and sound team did and everybody did on the sequence of the bomb and the wash, and like the mission completed hit right as you washed. And it's so weird because usually mission complete feels like yay, but it's just like mission complete, and you're like,
Oh.
really? And then, you know, Juno comes over on the Echo and you hear terrified villagers.
There are people
screaming.
Yeah.
And we're just like twisting the knife of the reality of what just happened. And I remember like the first time everybody put that, or like that came together in one of the builds, I was like, is this okay?
It's still my favorite sequence in the entire
we
DLC.
shipped it. So we shipped that sequence as but it was it was kind of honestly terrifying.
Jesse, how do you build that sequence from an audio standpoint?
Well, you know,
What field do you go to and shoot off nukes to capture that photo?
Or do you do file insert nuke sound? Like what?
I mean, we BL2 we had a file called Nuke Explode that the designers love to hook up on stuff, but I did not reach for that button. So, but yeah, I actually got to work on that whole sequence. You know, even though I was technically just an audio producer at the time, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I managed to get that job, but
Jesse does a lot of stuff.
Jesse's amazing.
Jesse did production stuff and was also going in and hooking up things because he's so passionate and knowledgeable about the entire audio process, and he's an implementer and so it was DLC.
Yeah, it was DLC. I mean, and you know, that's just game production. Like if you're excited about and working on this DLC, if you're excited to work on something, you're going to find a place to like get your hands dirty and just get in there. And so, yeah, I was talking to Brian Fieser, our lead on the project, and was just like, all right, man, so I want to tackle this. And so I had actually taken, we had done kind of an exercise, like a sound jam sort of thing, where we were doing what we called explosions from scratch. So there's no like explosion content, no recorded gunshots, no recorded booms or blasts or anything. And what we did was we recorded common household items. Like we had a balloon that we aired up, and you think, oh, you're just going to pop the balloon. Sure, we popped the balloon, but we also just let the air out, you know, like make that
squeal.
whine, the squeal.
Yeah.
Like flapped pillowcases, hit, you know, pieces of cardboard, ripped pieces of cardboard, ripped tape. You know, all these different things that we could think of to be like, what kind of textures and things could we use?
Is this one of those things where you rip a piece of cardboard and then you like lower the pitch 1,000 and then you like add 500 echoes and reverbs on it? And
well, don't just give away my tricks.
Because it doesn't sound like cardboard is what I'm saying. It sounds cool.
It's not unlike that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a lot of that. It's just chopping and squeezing and messing with these things. So like there's parts of the explosion that, you know, one of the things I really wanted to sell with this moment was the ramp up, because there's so much of just like seeing that pop and waiting. And a lot of, you know, what some movies do is they just like put the explosion at the same time as you see it. And that's not how sound
There's
works.
a delay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, being, you know, technically minded and working in the sound design stuff, what I do for that moment is I actually like pull all the other audio out. So like I lower the sound for like everything. So there's like a siren going off because you just launched this nuke, and I pull that siren down. I pull all the ambience down. So I create this space, and then you hear a thump, like just when that thing, because you need to feel something whenever it happens. So you just hear this,
it's just the ground going. Doof.
Just a little bit of a,
Yeah.
you know, and then you wait, and as it waits, you know, that's when I'm rolling off stuff, and I build up I built this high pitched sort of like squeal into the explosion. And that's built with the balloon. So I pitched the balloon up and just go like a, you know, kind of with it. But there's also, when we were doing our recordings, there was one of the sound designers, Josh Davidson, was in there. And off mic, like in the middle of like doing actual takes, he screams, "Hold on!" And I grabbed that and reversed it, pitched that up. So that's part of that in there as well, is this like scream of him yelling, "Hold on."
What does it sound like when it's pitched and reversed?
It just sounds like a sort of sound, And so there's that. And
Did he get a
then
voiceover credit?
But everything you created was so tactile and human, like it was, and you felt the sound.
Yeah, and so it's all meant to just be this. One of our pillars is to work with organic source first and not do like a bunch of extra synth and stuff, so that you get that relatable tactile feel.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, and there was actually like two different hits. There's the blast wave hitting you, and then there's that second hit of just like another, concussive blast that breaks all those, wooden crates and stuff in front of you. So I've got these like two like boom, boom, sort of sequence that you get a cadence for.
Right.
And then you get like all of your, other sound rolls back in, and that's when you hear like the screaming and stuff. And like just getting, and I this was one of the troubles of working in, because we were working at home during this time when I was working on this.
We had transferred
Partial pandemic project.
Yeah. And so I was like having to figure out how to translate this into a surround sound setup. And so I'm like working on stuff to try to I'm filling out, the front and the back speakers with all this sound so you can hear the debris like fly behind yourself and everything. And I'm sending it to Brian, and I'm just like, does this sound good over speakers? And he's like, I love it. So
Did you have to do similar DIY for the sound of the beasts? There's a lot of unique beasts in this one.
oh yeah, so the Bio Beast, right? Is that what we called him?
The Belix.
The Belix?
That's what we ended up calling
Dev
them.
names,
There's a
Yeah,
Bio
I know.
Beast
Yeah,
in
they were
my
called
mind.
by.
In my heart, it's the Bio Beast. So for those, we had some lofty goals for those guys. Like they were gonna.
I actually, speaking of the music things, I wanted their sound effects and their attacks to actually be in the same key as the music in the in the Obsidian Forest. Is that what we called it? I can't remember.
Yeah,
What that,
Obsidian Forest,
yeah, and the whole train wreck. Oh my gosh, train wreck. We wanted spectacle after every single plot mission, and my
Right.
gosh, team delivered. But no, the Belix like stuff was supposed to be in tune with the music that you heard.
Wow.
And my bet there is that again, when you elevate sound effects and music to a character, the player will feel a lot more grounded in the environment. That was one of the crazy ideas. I don't think we had time to hone that in. But
We did not.
Yeah, that was a tough thing to deliver on. Even with doing the score in house, it was hard to kind of get that those two things to match, because part of it is the sporadic nature of their attacks and just how the AI
Right.
design.
it wouldn't. Yeah.
The gameplay needs to come first, and it needs to be fun to play.
Yep.
And so like there's a little bit you kind of give and take, but the sound of the beat, those guys was that was a Josh one, I think, and we had these like elk horns and stuff that we were recording to like you'd blow into it and try to make it sound like an elk, and he took those, and we fully intended to like run those things through like Melodyne or something and get them in the same key and get them to work. And so we did a ton of tests with that, but I think in the end we just like couldn't actually get it to pitch match at the time.
You stumped him.
Well, I mean, but again, like DLC is a perfect opportunity to try things, and not everything's going to pan out. But I mean, it was a fun thing to try.
That it sounds really cool. Like I'd love for the score to swell in a minor, and then the beast is also screaming in a complementary note. Like that'd be pretty cool. Save it. Let's try it again sometime.
Yeah, I mean, those ideas you can always take it, try it again later.
In terms of the look and feel of Gehenna and a Vestige, other than canyon-esque, arid, western-ish, did you have specific visual goals for how the town and the planet would present themselves to the player?
I think just abandoned was like kind of like the main marching order there, just because again, like it used to be so much more populated.
Yeah, who wants to be here?
Yeah, and so
A lot of, I mean, Pandora's like that too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all like, what are you doing here?
yeah. I mean, it was Pandora still has spots of life,
Yeah,
And
like
it's also
yeah.
got resources too. So,
Yeah.
And it's more hostile, like everything is trying to kill you. Where Gehenna it tells the story of the abandoned town, like the classic abandoned mine town or whatever.
Do we also use the unique elements of Gehenna to have something more akin to the Pandoran experience? We don't have Iridium, but we have Core. We don't have Sirens, but we have Rose, who gets powers from her tattoo. We don't have a Vault Guardian, but we've got the Ruiner. Is that how we're keeping it familiar but different?
I think so. There's definitely elements of that whenever we're developing through, like I was saying, you want to keep the familiar based off what players' expectations are after playing your game for 30, 40, 60 hours, however long they played the mainline game, to be able to go in and connect with something that's fresh and new. And I think Matt and the team nailed all of those different things whenever it comes to trying to figure out what will they be able to grasp onto without having to do like a full new tutorialization of all of this stuff.
It's like when a band has a new album and they're trying a new sound.
Yeah.
But you don't want to hear like their samba album or something. Like you just like you guys can go acoustic, but don't
Freeform jazz coming up.
Don't bring out the marimba or something. In terms of the characters of this DLC, if I'm not mistaken, of the 4 Season Pass DLCs, this is the only one to not revolve around existing characters.
That's right.
You say that with a yes, that's Mike. I did that. Correct.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a passion of mine to bring something new to whatever I do in game design, whether I'm creating content or doing something as large as, a DLC and trying to cultivate something new. And so one of the easiest ways to do that in DLC, and it is a kind of a tension between like everybody wants to see their favorite characters that weren't in main game come back. And so DLC is a perfect time to do that. But no, it was an intentional decision and push by me that like, let's tell something brand new. And literally the only thing that's the same are your player characters, and we don't even call them Vault Hunters in Bounty of Blood. They are bounty hunters.
Yeah.
And so like I just wanted to see if we could tell something brand new and introduce something new.
We do with this DLC. You kind of recast the Vault Hunter as the lonesome cowboy or the Ronin. And again, you don't call him Vault Hunter, but you give him that same sort of quickly earned celebrity that the town is like impressed. Like there is a cool person in town doing big things, and they're here to help us, and it makes the town like kind of react like you're the new celebrity, you're the hot shit.
Yeah, and I think what helps that is that they were also caught in a very particular time as well, when they had the passing of authority between the sheriff to Juno, and so you're caught up in this drama tension. So,
Right.
And you're the one taking action. So,
It's something I was talking to Anthony about earlier, is that a lot of Borderlands story can be summed up with, I've got a problem and I just do not want to handle it.
Yeah.
Could you do it for me?
Yeah. And many have come through and failed, and so you step into the role of
In terms of Rose, we've talked about how you wanted the villain story to be a focus. How did Rose come to life?
I'm very big again into simple plots, and like I think John Wick Western was something that we tossed around a lot because the very first John Wick movie does a very good job in getting you invested in his conflict by the dog part. Yep. And so I think attachment to a villain is incredibly important for games and any sort of entertainment, because you have to have some sort of connection, and it can't just be some faceless talking head that's just fed to us. And so I really wanted us to spend a moment with the villain, and maybe even befriend the villain, but witness, not off screen, but on screen, something that gets us sickened.
Yeah.
And so that's when the idea, her like Rose killing Toge, killing her pet Saurian or devil wasn't originally in the script. And I was like, we need something else. Like, we were going to spend time with Rose, and then she goes away, and then she comes back. The Vault Hunter opened the doors and killed the sheriff. It's like, no, we need something more visceral and dark. And so Well, Toge's my pet. Oh, that's nice. You've spent a whole lifetime. Oh, you're not any use to me anymore? Bang. Yikes.
It comes across initially like it's going to be a mercy killing by someone that loves their animal, and then it's weirdly cold.
Yes.
And you still you don't quite know who Rose is yet, and you're like, like, what's her deal?
Yeah, she doesn't. It's kind of like, all right, well, let's go.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like because you're trying
Moving
to
on.
because you're trying to like, am I comfortable with this person? Am I uncomfortable? Oh, uncomfortable.
You also realize just very shortly after that she had staged a fight with her own gang. And is this a recruiting tactic? Is she feeling you out in the same way that you're going to feel her out and see what her deal is? Or
Yeah, I mean, there was multiple motivations, but she was trying to size up the bounty hunter,
Right.
to see how much of a threat, and if there is some muscle there, she can manipulate the situation to gain access to what we find out is the egg and not the centerpiece of town.
I feel like what was also that really moved me because of that entire sequence with her putting down Toge was it happens like 5 minutes into starting the DLC. So you don't know enough about her to know that. So it gives you that sense of unease and like, that feels odd, but maybe this is.
And as you ask
okay
in the right
here.
questions, and then it doesn't make you wait too long before you get your answers, which is nice. In terms of Juno, the Hatchet, this is our reformed devil rider. She becomes our new sheriff. Is that a Western archetype that you wanted to play with?
It's really like maybe, but like that was like the redemption arc. Like
Right.
like Rose was our revenge, and Juno was the redemption. And so if people like picked up some of the not the ecologues, I forgot what to call them, but and find out her story, like she was definitely kind of a hired hatchet. But it was always, there was always a good side, and a motivation was like, well, this is because we need more rations, we need survival. Like, so it was still just a survival tactic, but Rose took it the extra mile and tried to hire her to, just wipe out a bunch of people for no reason, just for power's sake. And that's when it was
Right.
like, okay, maybe
I'm
this
bad.
is,
I'm not that
this
bad.
is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we wanted to explore that tension because the town rightly didn't really trust her. And so, we wanted to explore a little bit of that redemption arc and tension.
A lot of our other NPCs are classic Western archetypes. You've got
for
your grizzled sheriff, your useless deputy, your barkeep.
Yeah.
Does Vestige feel empty without those people? Like, do they have to be there?
I think there's a comfort in really leaning into Western tropes for that. It's in such a short time, you don't have like 30 hours to build an entire world. So you can really lean into some of the tropes to make Vestige immediately feel familiar to players. And so I think leaning into some of those tropes really helps build the world at a quicker pace.
And finally, we've talked a bit about the Wanderer, our troubadour that sort of narrates the events and puts them in song. And I'm just going to ask, did you write the songs?
I did write that song.
It just sounds like you.
Yeah, I wrote the initial draft, and I passed it to one of our writers, Connor, and so he did a pass on it. But yeah, no, I wrote that. What's actually funny is, like, I think I sent it to Andrew Cheney, and I was like, all right, here's the draft. And so I assumed somebody else sang it, and I assumed somebody else in audio was going to re-record my guitar parts, and then I played the game when it went live, and I was like, oh shit, that's my draft guitar. Oh no, that's shipped. Okay, but yeah. So again, it's like, music is a character. I'm just very passionate about getting something out there.
This hell is a home is a line that rings true, and I think tells the story of Vestige in just a few words. And it kind of what you were saying, it's abandoned, but these are the people that are still here. Everyone probably has had a chance to get out of Vestige by now, and they've chosen to stay. So this hell is a home to them.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, Gehenna literally means is another word for hell. It's like an abandoned, godless place of bones.
Oh wow!
So like it's like instead of calling it
Bounty of Bones.
Yeah, so Gehenna is really the planet's name is just kind of another version of hell.
And I don't think we've ever mentioned it on this show, but Matt Cox, who wrote those songs, is also Wandermine, who does our theme song for this very podcast. I was given, when we were putting this together, I was given all of the music that was made specifically for Borderlands 3 radio There's like 50, 60 tracks.
A lot
And
of cool stuff on there.
I'm going through it. It's all great. It's all really cool. But I'm looking for a certain vibe. And I hear the track that we end up using, and I'm like, I'll save that one. And I keep going, and I keep going, and I keep going. And I'm like, oh, no, that first one, that was it. And April, who is our producer, said, by the way, Matt Cox said you can use any of his stuff. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to need it. I've already picked a song by Wander Mine, whatever that is. So I'm good, but tell him thanks. Anyway, a little bit of behind the scenes trivia.
I'm honored you chose it. That's great.
In terms of everything else in gameplay, what makes Bounty of Blood a unique experience for a Borderlands player? And I'm staring at you because I feel like you would know.
That's a good question. Well, I mean, so looking, if you're a player and you're looking at the slate of DLCs and post-launch content that you have, going through the different live things, takedowns, raids, and then the events and things that we do in between it. For me, it's if you're absorbing all of that, you see like this is very different from what I just got done playing, which was a love story with some spooky stuff going on between Hammerlock and Wainwright. That all ends very nice and on the up and up, and then you go into this very different environment.
It's a tonal whiplash. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I look at it from my perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah, gameplay. I mean, I go back to just some of the like Metroidvania, gameplay wrinkles we tried to add there. Obviously, everybody's going to get a new set of loot and whatnot, but honestly, like just a new way to experience a story with the narrator. Like you could say that that's just a story mechanic, but to me, like the narrator was sort of a world mechanic and a gameplay mechanic to some degree.
Well, and there's also the sort of core enhanced flora and fauna that we've discussed, like with the jump pads, the breeze bloom. But you've also got the core sploder. You've got the trader weed.
Yeah, the trader weed.
Yeah.
I spent most of my time on Borderlands 3 working on AI, whether NPCs or vault bosses. So I'm very in tune to like, I like the idea of AI fighting for you. So, and again, it's kind of a weird thing to put in a game where it's literally a power fantasy. So you've built your character, you've been maxed. And so why would I use something else? But it's still a way to interact with the world to get that little bit extra firepower. So, turning AI to your side for a while with the charm or with the trader weed, it's just a fun wrinkle. And then again, DLCs are perfect. Like, let's see what happens. People have fun with this wrinkle and that wrinkle, and then we need a horse, so let's make a new vehicle that is half creature, half machine, like this motorcycle jet beast thing to ride around, because you can't have a Western without a horse. So
the jet beast is a pretty cool vehicle too. Like it's got that big high bar chopper feel.
Yes,
but then also it fits in the world that you're in.
Yeah, we almost, like, the dream was the initial dream was like, well, I want to ride dinosaurs too. So it was like the Devil Riders, and we were going to ride dinosaurs, but we decided it was a lot more effective if the Devil Rider gang rode it, because it made more sense too, because Rose obviously, with her whistle and learning how to control and tame the beast, it doesn't make sense for the bounty hunter to also just, I figured it out. It's that makes her whole reason for being not as important. So we went more mechanical creature hybrid, which was our horse. I loved it.
That also gave us an opportunity with the music to like, you've got a little theme when you hop on that.
Yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't know how many people notice, but yeah, the music does shift. Like we wanted that feel of like you're riding your steed kind of a thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. We talked just briefly about how the production was affected by the pandemic. I'm looking at the release date and I don't see how it wasn't. So how was the production impacted by the pandemic?
I think a lot of it was more the landing and the later pipeline teams like effects and audio. They had to shutter. I remember I was
March, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember I was doing a Borderlands show out in San Francisco with Greg and Fran, and I was in my hotel room and I was watching a basketball game, and then they never came back out. I was like, oh, I'm about to be stuck in San Francisco forever.
Oh no.
And then I immediately thought, what are we going to do about all of
How
this
do we game
content?
dev right now?
Yeah. Like we have other DLC stuff to do, and the one that we're, is on the horizon right now. So the studio was great. We all, talked about it and got everyone mobilized and then spun back up. And
Yep.
IT was amazing
Oh my
during that
gosh.
time too. They got everyone what they needed to be able to jump back on, and we didn't really miss too much of a beat.
That's
It's
kind of hard to believe.
Looking back, I still don't understand. Like, yeah, it's a miracle. Like games are a miracle anyway, but that was extra miracle.
Yeah.
The fact that it came out like not 6 months after you intended, and the
Yeah.
fact that it came out at a quality standard that,
And
that
at
we
an
held.
intense time where we're landing the DLC, like we're finishing it up. It wasn't a downtime.
Yeah, and I think that actually made it to where it wasn't as big a deal as if it had shifted by even just 2 months. If we were supposed to ship 2 months sooner or 2 months later, because the landing process, it affected a couple of those departments, and then obviously people like me, and then also QA who has to go through and bug fix and work with
Right.
first party and all them. But a lot of those folks are in different parts of the world. Some of them work remote, some of them don't already. But yeah, it was communication. Really, we had to take that up 100 times at that point, because you have to talk with all of these different people all over the world to be able to make sure that you land the thing and get it out when you're supposed to.
That's nuts. Was VO done during the pandemic, or was that already completed at that point?
Oh, I think we had gotten the
Yeah,
bulk of it
I want to say it was
done
done.
before that point, and then
I think
yeah,
maybe there was
there's
pickups or
probably
something,
some
but
pickups we had to do. But yeah, VO during the pandemic was really strange. Luckily, some people have studios in their homes,
Right.
And
And
that's
if they didn't, they did shortly thereafter.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of a mixed bag with some of those setups too, like how that works out. But yeah, we had to go home, and the audio facilities like here are really great. Like we've got really controlled, rooms that are sound treated with nice speakers, and we even have a room set up for like Dolby Atmos and stuff here. So, and then we had to figure out how we could get a guy in to the studio and be safe, and like get
it's
in
like
there.
the tunnels and the suits from E.T. It's like,
Yeah. And yeah, so our, a lot of our work was still being done at that time because we're kind of on the heels of everybody else.
yeah.
So it was very strange.
Were there any other times that any of you had to take on another role, take on responsibilities that you haven't done before, just do something because you were the one there?
A little bit for me. So there was a point, because we were landing and because of all of the different things that were going on and needed, specifically from Matt and his director's team. People like Brandon Johnson kind of rallying all these guys together. He's the producer of that project, and making sure that they have to do what they need to. And then we have pandemic stuff going on, or on the heels of it, and then needing to land the game at the same time. We had different marketing needs that had to be met, and I had familiarity with that. I was the one who did a lot of the choreography and directing of some of the stuff that we did for Borderlands 3's like reveal event, the gameplay, the first gameplays that you see, demos and things like that at E3 or any of those other shows. I'm really passionate about being able to make sure that I can. It's my job to represent the team internally, but then I also take that onus on my back whenever I'm representing them externally, because I have a really good holistic view of what that is. And so I wanted to make sure that these guys were being represented really well from the team who was trying to capture gameplay. And I think it was.
Plus, those things are scrutinized.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so
Well,
much.
and I understand that too. That people are going to stop and pause. And then they're going to make an entire podcast or YouTube video about this one, this 2-second clip or whatever. And so some of the stuff that we were getting back wasn't really nailing that, especially whenever you're making a trailer, you can kind of say, okay, hey, capture guys, go and we want to see, talk with Matt. I want to see these new things. I want to see somebody on the jet beast. I want to see, a small clip of this. Don't show any of this shit. And then there's always a mixed bag whenever it comes back. It's for a trailer specifically, but then you can just edit and cut it, snip it together, and the trailer folks make it look good. Whenever you're asked to do 15 minutes of continuous gameplay, it's extremely different, especially if this is the first legitimate look that a team or that the fans are going to be.
It's
able to
more than
see.
just game capture.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And we were trying to like not spoil the Rose twist, which happened so early, which I mean, sorry, I had created a lot of hell for. It's like, please capture around this.
Yeah, and there was a couple of, I think we had like 2 or 3 things that we wanted to make sure that people didn't capture and touch
connect yet.
because of where they were and how.
And
they
you don't go
affected
like
game.
the Marvel route of replacing a character skin or something so that you can still just shoot it anyway.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So we had to do this, and so what I did was kind of reprise my role of some of the stuff that I did for the marketing on BL3, and sat down and captured a bunch of areas after talking with Matt and Kevin Duke and Brandon Johnson about where are the areas of the game. Here's the things that I always look for whenever we're showing something to the fans for the first time. What are the things that get you guys really excited? And so found a section of the game, wanted to make sure that we hit like the Jet Beast. In fact, you start on the Jet Beast. You start on the Jet Beast in the open plains. You got the music going, fight these new enemies, see these new things. But again, to go back to you want to touch and strike the balance of the familiar and that new at the same time.
Yeah.
So doing that, I wanted to make sure we showed one of our new loading screens and how quickly we were able to get it to load at that point. And as soon as you get on the other side of that, you hear the narrator. You get to kind of set the scene and kind of pan and see a lot of the town that was there. There was like fireworks and stuff going off.
Oh yeah,
So we wanted to be able to show that.
big
and show-
sweeping spectacles.
yeah, like the mountains, like all of this different stuff. And so I got to be able to jump in and do that because my role was actually the head of DLC for Borderlands 3.
Oh.
And so, but every time it's kind of like I oversee each of these individual projects, but then whenever it gets closer, like it's more prime time, like, hey, Matt, what do you guys need? What are you looking for? What can I help with? And hey, here's the things that you guys need to know and that you guys need to make sure that you guys are doing. But being able to jump in and do that was something that I didn't expect to have to do again on a DLC that I love being able to do on a main game.
In a production where obviously all game dev is difficult, and it also takes a really long time, but in this one especially, when right at the end you have to deal with the pandemic, was there anything that you did to celebrate when it was actually done, when it was gold, when it shipped?
Man, I know Anthony showed up at my door with some whiskey.
And a mask.
In a mask, yes, of course. It was
Not like a frightening mask, a COVID mask, right?
COVID mask,
Okay,
yeah.
Fistful of bourbon. Bourbon?
Yeah.
Bourbon?
Bourbon?
I'm not actually drinking now. Fistful of bourbon. Yes, is what it was.
Cowboy themed whiskey?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was.
I was driving down the highway to work one day, and I saw this big truck. Like advertising actually worked, and it said it said fistful of bourbon, and it was all Western themed. I was like,
So you just followed that truck.
I should have.
Which doesn't seem like it connects to our conversation, but it used to be called Bounty of Blood, Fistful of Redemption, and then we dropped the subtitle for reasons. So Fistful of Bourbon at the time, it made sense.
Exactly.
for-
So whenever it drove by, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to check that out. And then I went and found some, and so I went door to door with these guys out of my own pocket.
my God.
I
We all did some of that, right? Like where it's like, you know what? I got to go take tacos to a friend.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Like, we're all going to be
That's- it
30 feet away from each other. And
yeah.
like,
And it stinks because it's tough for us. Like whenever the Quebec studio does something, they always invite us, and you know, if people can go, then they can go. But you know, you have to fly to Canada. Here, you know, we'll gather, we'll go downstairs at Nirvana or something, or at the restaurant,
Yeah,
and
we'll
kind
have
of
a moment.
hang out with each other,
Yeah.
hug, high five, and do all that stuff. For these guys, they couldn't,
Yeah.
they didn't get that. And so it was really, really tough. So I was just trying to think of
We
a
did
creative
get
way to be like,
t-shirts.
hey, really proud. Yeah, we got t-shirts.
I made a video game and all I got was his t-shirt. Yeah.
we did a team photo with the Ruiner
We've
as
got
a-
the
as a
Ruiner in
baby.
like this old timey black and white photo where we photoshopped the Ruiner. That was awesome.
We were able to get that into the game, but that was
Oh,
was
we did.
before.
Oh, yeah, because that was in the
like the secret room.
The secret room.
That's rad.
Yeah, BT built that. Yeah,
We did. Shout out BT.
That brings us to the trivia portion of our show.
God.
This might be easy for you guys. You're
excited
pretty
for this.
close to the material.
We'll see.
Do we have to buzz in?
Yeah, you do have to. You can say ding. I don't know.
It's 2 games ago. I remember.
Here we go. Butcher Rose is the third antagonist in the whole Borderlands franchise to survive the game's climax. Can you name any of the other three? This is a stumper.
So there's two.
Not the warrior. What's the name? Oh my gosh. Does the destroyer count?
No.
Okay. It should.
She
brought
give?
back the destroyer.
Okay, here we go. The first, Captain Scarlet from the Borderlands 2 DLC.
Oh, okay.
The
Yep.
second is August and Tails. Third is Rose. There's a fourth if you don't kill the Handsome Jack AI in Tails. And that's it. The last one is, in this game, Rose puts a bounty on Juno's head. She offers a larger reward if Juno is killed in a particular way.
I mean, probably with the hatchet.
That's it. That's it.
I mean, of course it's with. I totally remember that. That was an educated guess from oh
the
my
game
gosh.
that you creative
Yeah,
directed.
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's fine. We're all
I would
good here.
think that somebody would have done this.
in
I don't-
4 years.
I don't know. We need a narrator for you. Is what we need.
Yeah, oh
what
my
Matt
gosh.
didn't realize is he had forgotten everything from the last 4 years.
There it is. Perfect.
The last thing we do on this show is everyone has to do their best Marcus saying,
Oh.
so you want to hear a podcast?
All right, Anthony, go ahead.
I love the look of terror in everyone. So every single time I say this, there's terror.
All right, here we go.
So you want to hear a podcast?
That's pretty good. That's not bad.
That's a pretty
I
good.
hang out
that's
with
pretty
Randy
good.
Varnell a lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
there
Oh,
you go.
Varnell did an excellent
Of
one.
course
he's
he
in
did.
the
Oh, yeah.
he's in the top
That
three.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It'd
yeah.
probably be him and Cosner are probably pretty good.
Oh,
Cosner
yeah,
hasn't been
Cosner,
on
yeah.
yet. He would be amazing.
Yep.
It's actually Varnell and Pitchford. It's two Randys so far. And Anthony Birch. Anthony Birch was also
Oh,
right
yeah.
at the top.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's hear it, Jesse.
Okay.
Get zen, shake it out, shake it out.
Equa.
All right. Straight face. I gotta think Russian. Is he Russian?
I don't think
space,
there's a Russia.
There's no space Russia.
You're stalling for time now.
Yeah, and that's true. Let's just get it out.
Go.
So you want to hear a podcast, eh?
For entertainment value alone, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
For
I
Marcus,
mean-
it was not great.
That's
All right,
Right.
Cox. Hit me.
So, you want to hear a podcast, eh?
that's pretty good.
You got the gravel. You did
got-
get the... It's so, now that you've all done it, the secret seems to be in the jowls. If you can get down here.
Oh,
that's where it comes in.
Yeah, I've got a
No, I can only go up from here. Like that's all I got.
Cox, I think you win this round. You go into the
Oh.
brackets, but I will give you, Jesse, special commendation for making us all laugh. Thanks for joining us, Vault Hunters. If you think this town ain't big enough for the two of us, then subscribe to the audio version of Echoes from the Borderlands wherever podcasts are available. However, if you think the Dalton gang are a bunch of gutless yellow cowards, then subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/gearboxofficial to see future episodes. If you play video games, and who doesn't, and you'd like to get every current Borderlands game at one great price, go snag our new bundle, the Borderlands Collection Pandora's Box, available now on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Huge thanks to my guests, Matt Cox, Anthony Nicholson, and Jesse Lemons, as well as our behind-the-scenes heroes, April Johnson, Dakota Warren, Matthew Ward, Mike Cosner, Rob Fernandez, Mark Petty, and Hannah Terry. Our theme song is Get Out of My Head by Wondermine. Matt Cox. For Echoes from the Borderlands, I'm Joel Watson. See you next time, Vault Hunters.